And the seasons, they go round and round, and the painted ponies go up and down. We are captive on the carousel of time. We sing this Joni Mitchell song each spring when we celebrate our youth bridging into adulthood. It's about how our lives and perceptions change with age. I love the song, but it has a problem. It ends when the boy is 20. What happens when the boy is 60 or 70, or like my friend Bill, 84? What happens to our vision of the world? And how does our understanding of the meaning of life change as we age? Paul Simon told us what he thought old age would be like from the perspective of a 20-year-old in his song, Old Friends. Maybe like me, you're old enough to remember it. He said, "We are decrepit bookends, sitting quietly on park benches, waiting fearfully for death. How terribly strange to be 70, he said. When I was 20, I thought I could change the world and had dreams that extended far into the future. Dreams of romance, career, and adventure, and I probably would have agreed with Simon about those old men on the park bench. At the same time, like many other young people in the 1960s, I felt isolated and alone. Think of Simon and Garfunkel's song, I Am a Rock, I Am an Island, with lyrics such as, hiding in my room, safe within my womb, I touch no one and no one touches me. Think also of the lyrics of the Peter, Paul, and Mary song, tell me why you're crying, my son. You will inherit what mankind has done. In a world filled with sorrow and woe, if you ask me why this is so, I really don't know. For thousands of generations, my forebears had procreated, extending the human journey. Now it was my turn. Was I the first to question the wisdom of perpetuating the suffering? The recent Nazi Holocaust and the Vietnam conflict raging at the time fed my negativity about life. It wasn't until I was into my 40s and had discovered Unitarian Universalism that the next verse in the Peter, Paul, and Mary song began to make sense to me. But if you take my hand, my son, all will be well when the day is done. That line suggests that love triumphs over despair. Indeed, that love gives meaning to life and makes it worthwhile. At 20, I just didn't believe that. Our vision of the meaning of things changes with time, and 25 years of living had changed my way of looking at the world. So what is my vision of the world today, decades later, after having actually reached 70? Is it the vision of a useless, frightened bookend? In this service, I will discuss how my personal journey has affected one aging man's vision of the meaning of life, and will wind up with what has meaning for me today. I will call upon thoughts I've had and writings I have generated over 5 decades, and will refer to songs that have inspired me. I'm not sure where this sermon fits in our themes this year that involve our 7 principles and 6 sources. Perhaps I could call upon the fact that as a human, I have worth and dignity, so my opinion matters. Or maybe I could think of this as my own take on the search for mystery and wonder. I'll leave the answer up to you. I need to point out that these are my personal thoughts. Perhaps they will resonate with you, perhaps not. I recommend each of you come up with your own, and hope this talk will help you get started on that task. Before I begin, let me add that my ideas come from the perspective of a divorced, childless man who grew up white, middle class, and healthy in a prosperous, peaceful nation. Someone who attended college and had a successful career. I could have had a large family and be spending my holiday dinners surrounded by grandchildren. I could have been born without white, heterosexual male privilege, or grown up in a bad neighborhood, or become involved at an early age with drugs and crime. I could have spent many years homeless on the streets or languishing in prison. I could have been born severely disabled. I could be a victim of war, living in a refugee camp and wondering when I'll get my next meal. Or I could be a desperate migrant heading north through Mexico in a caravan. I can only imagine how my thoughts on the meaning of life might be different. However, I can only speak from my own experience. Life's meaning, as seen by those with very different life experiences from mine, is a presentation for another day. So, with those limitations, let me proceed. At my UU congregations in Salt Lake City and Berkeley, we had a service named after a line in the Mary Oliver poem, A Summer's Day. What will you do with your one wild and precious life? People from each decade of life, starting with a youth under 10 and ending with someone in their 9th or 10th decade, share their vision of life and their future plans based on that vision. It's an amazing experience, tracing the journey through the stages of life. The youngest and oldest often have dreams that may extend only until tomorrow. The youth thinking of an upcoming visit to Disneyland or a birthday party, while the octogenarian just wants to enjoy living a bit longer. Teenagers anticipate graduation and college, while 20 and 30-somethings dream of families and career advancement, and perhaps of winning sporting events or even scaling Everest. Most people in their 40s are consumed by their families and careers. I participated in one of those services shortly after turning 50. As I said earlier, I had overcome my extreme negativity by then. Still, at this point, you look back over your life and can't help but wonder how you got here. In my presentation, I recalled the hopes and dreams of my youth, many of which had reached dead ends, but concluded that given the obstacle course of life, there was no way I could have reached my original goals. Had I made other choices, I said, my life would have been different, but no better. Besides, I had also made some wonderful choices along the way, such as becoming a Unitarian Universalist. I vowed to try to accept my failures, let those I love know how important they are to me, find courage, express love, seek peace of mind and spirit, and do more affirming. That was easy to say, but much harder to actually do. My ultimate conclusion upon reaching 50 on how to proceed was to accept where you are, aim intelligently toward the future, and move on. At the time, I also believed there were adventures ahead, new friendships to form, old ones to reaffirm, and the possibility of a love relationship or two. So at 50, I had lots of hopes for the future. Turning 60, however, was a bit more sobering. I wrote at the time, you only get one shot at life. You struggle painfully at work and play, and the lesson you learn is that there is no right way to live. All you can do is just take it all in, learn, and if you're lucky, share the briefest portion with others. The richness I have had in life has not been enough, but it will have to suffice. Sure, like many others in the course of aging, I have had negative moments when I felt as if I had abandoned my dreams, left behind possibilities, and become lost in loneliness. Despite power, knowledge, and good intentions, I had not changed the world. What happened? Aging involves accepting what is. Once again, that's something easy to say, but hard to do. Happily, good friends and community help such moments of despair to quickly pass. My advice for the future at 60 was, don't pass up the nectar. Inhale sunsets. Feel joy. Be at one with beauty. Exercise wit and logic, run like the wind, be exhilarated, and experience infinite peace. I sought a full appreciation of each moment, the celebration of its special nuances, complexity, improbability, and beauty. Good stuff if you could just pull it off. The plan on how to live I finally settled on was not that different from what I'd written a decade earlier, to once again move on and do the best you can to celebrate what remains of your life. At 65, I put the daily grind of work behind me and moved to Southern California for retirement, a milestone everyone agrees is one of the few positive steps in the aging process. And I became part of this loving community. Retirement opened the possibility of new adventures. So last year, as I turned 70, I traveled through Ireland, experienced the exotic people and animals of sub-Saharan Africa, swam in the Indian Ocean, and shared good times with friends and family. I followed that up this year with a trip down the Danube, and I have plans for the future. In many ways, I am now living my dream of living life fully. But having reached 90% of my life expectancy, I am reminded constantly that my time grows short. A good friend with whom I used to hike and discuss women has died. My brother-in-law, with whom I disagreed on politics for 50 years, has also recently passed away. How strange it is to lose family and friends. When it happens in youth, it is tragic, but later on, it becomes an everyday event, a fact of life. And with each day, the inevitability that I will join them grows nearer. In the words of Peter, Paul, and Mary, I've taken my place on that great mandala, the circle of life, as it has moved through my brief moments of time. So how does impending death affect my thoughts on the meaning of life, and how does it change how I should plan to spend the time that remains? At 20, I was unconcerned with mortality. You live each day as if your life will go on forever. At 50, I once again didn't address mortality. It's out there somewhere, but don't worry about it. By 60, as I said earlier, I had become a bit less optimistic, writing one night that in the end nothing will have mattered but the experience of it all, the joy and pain. The road leads only onward, no sense turning around and looking where I've been. The days come and go, and I just go through the motions. Oh well, you do the best you can, and although it keeps getting closer, you try not to think about your mortality. And then, in my mid-60s, I came to an incredible conclusion. Admiring a fantastic sunset, standing alone on a mountaintop, and feeling the icy wind upon your face on a crisp morning have special meaning because they are unique experiences, because each could be the last. I realized that if I lived forever, nothing would matter, as I could always put off until tomorrow what I might do today, and I could repeat each fantastic experience until it was commonplace. What gives meaning to life is that it ends in death. So now, as I move onward into my 70s and have faced health issues associated with age, heart problems, and cancer, I may not welcome my impending demise, but I no longer fear or deny it. I mourn that when I die, the world will go on without me, and I will be all too soon forgotten, but I realize death is a natural and unavoidable event to be taken in stride. Besides, as I heard on a recent CBS Sunday morning broadcast, for just $160,000, I could be buried near the graves of my favorite movie stars. With this in mind, it's really not that bad growing older. I recently read a biography of Agatha Christie. In her 20s, she was quite beautiful and had recently married a man she deeply loved, a dream come true. But she had no self-confidence and considered herself a failure. In her 70s, she was a frumpy, overweight matron with failing eyesight and hearing, but she had become a wealthy, world-renowned author and had developed supreme self-confidence. She said, "Don't let anybody tell you nothing exciting happens to you when you are old. It does. It's just as nice to be 72 as young." Daniel Gilbert, author of Stumbling on Happiness, agrees, saying that older people spend more time doing what they enjoy with close friends and less doing what they have to do with mere acquaintances. As a result, he says, people in their 70s tend to actually be happier than those in their 20s or 30s. So Paul Simon was wrong about those old friends on the park bench. Instead of cowering in fear, they have most likely come to terms with their fate and, freed from the rat race, are enjoying their remaining time relaxing and watching the frenetic world go by from their comfortable vantage point. I wonder whether Simon reflected upon this when he himself turned 70 a few years ago. So what then, from my own vantage point on that park bench, after 7 decades on this earth, do I believe gives meaning to life? In college, I wrote that I needed to cling tightly to beauty and dreams lest they slip from my midst, leaving nothing to temper the bitter. Some ideas from youth are actually worthwhile and survive. Enjoying what is beautiful and pursuing dreams have helped sustain me throughout my life, and they remain today an important part of my answer to the meaning of life. Of course, I did discover later on that those dreams must be built and constantly rebuilt. We must amass the courage to face each day anew and to start over when all is lost. But it is something we can and must do. Along with the other songs I mentioned earlier from my youth, There was one that inspired and carried me through hard times. John Denver sang, "Today is the first day of the rest of my life. I awake as a child to see the world begin on monarch wings and birthday wonderings." Its message to celebrate and make the most of every moment resonated with me then and remains important to me now. As poet Jammin Jesse says, "What I do today is important because I'm exchanging a day of my life for it." In other words, it's important to be awake and to live intentionally. I closed my presentation on turning 50 by saying my plan was to celebrate life and live it fully, relishing a fine glass of wine, the companionship of close friends, the warmth of a crackling wood fire, and the magic of candlelight. 20 years later, that still sounds like a good plan. Here I spoke again of beauty and of living in the moment, but added the value of friendship. As I once shared in a reflection at my Palo Alto congregation, I have known the unearned love of family, friends, and community, and have had the opportunity in a vast, seemingly meaningless universe for a brief opportunity to dance in the circle of life. I was speaking once again about the value of friendship, but added the importance of family, community, love, and the joy of just being alive. It was also a statement that in spite of its brevity and disappointments, life is worth living, and every life is special. In the words of our closing hymn, "For each child who's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are." Of course, as I've mentioned several times, love has given meaning to my life, but not what I expected, the long-term passionate love I anticipated at 20. My romantic relationships were short-lived, and I spent 17 years in a comfortable but mediocre marriage. I have, however, been blessed with the lasting love and companionship of close friends, my siblings, and the dogs who have been family to me over the last 40 years. I cannot complain. And now that I've had the good fortune to live into retirement, giving me the freedom to make new discoveries and learn new things, enrich my relationships, and have new experiences of beauty, I am even more certain of the need to live life fully. Each additional day is a precious gift to cherish, and you must make the most of every experience, live in the moment, and enjoy life. Finally, I should add that there is real joy in helping others, not out of duty, but because it is satisfying and truly makes us feel good. Assisting others in need promotes compassion and mutual understanding, moving us from tribal violence toward global community. And while we cannot change the nature of humanity in a single lifetime and end all suffering, we can get involved politically and speak out for justice. It is one way we can leave a legacy behind by making the world a better, more loving place for our having lived, and it therefore adds purpose and meaning to life. So in summary, upon reaching 70, I can say that those things that give happiness, joy, and meaning to my life are celebrating the beauty around me, creating and pursuing dreams, learning new facts and skills, knowing love, companionship, and friendship, helping others and trying to improve the world, being in community with all of you, and living each moment intentionally and joyfully as a fully conscious human being. Whatever happens tomorrow, I am here today, grateful for the opportunity to be alive in this magical world, and I intend to make the most of it. So, what are your thoughts on the meaning of life?